This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. So if you can hear me, can I hear 1122? 1122.
What is it?
1122.
One one two
Okay.
two.
So just to
One, one, two, two.
confirm, you
Please,
can hear.
yeah, yeah,
One one two
please,
two.
turn off your my video.
Yeah. Okay. So you can turn off your video. If turning off your video will help. Some people are using their phone and their network is not that fast. So it will reduce the bandwidth that is being consumed or the data. So introduction to networks, elements of the network. Okay, so what is a network? Now, every one of us will be very familiar that most of the times when in those days, for some of us that are old a bit, remember that when you go to a bank, they will be telling you that there's no network, no network, so they cannot process transaction. There's no network, or on your phone, you say there's no network, you cannot call, you cannot receive call, or you say the network is bad. This is a term which every one of us is familiar with. So we say network, banks, you cannot possess transaction, or your phone, the network is not strong. So, but what is a network? A network actually is a connection between two or more devices to share resources. So when you have a PC, a computer, a phone, a printer, any device, once you are able to connect two or more devices to share a particular resource. So this resource can be internet, it can be data, it can be a file, it can be an application, it can be anything, whatever resources that you're sharing within them. So network is just that connection. When you have 1, 2, 3, or 5 devices connected to share a resource, that is what we refer to as a network. So that's a basic and globally acceptable definition of what a network is. Now, when we talk about networks, there are some key outlines that you need to pay attention to, because we are setting some foundations of networking, and one key concept you need to understand is the local area network. The local area network is a form of network. And this local area network is a network that is local. So from the word local area, so it's something that is local within your vicinity, within your office space, within the location. So let's say the network within an office building is called a LAN, within a department is called a LAN, within a home office, that is what you call a LAN. So when you have a network that is local to your PC, local to your phone, that is what we call a local area network. And it is abbreviated as LAN, L-A-N, LAN. So, and this is one example. So you can find here in this slides here, you have marketing department, they have their LAN. In sales department, they have their LAN. They also have some servers. And when this LAN connect together is where a router comes in. So, but for now, we won't be talking about router. When we get to router, we'll talk about what a router is. Now, another form of network that you also need to have an understanding of is what we call the virtual LAN, the VLAN, the virtual LAN. So, if you notice the difference between a LAN and a virtual LAN or a VLAN is the virtual. And you know that anything virtual means something that is logical, is not visible, something is a bit abstract. So when you mean a virtual LAN, is a LAN that is quite abstract, meaning that you could have a LAN spanning multiple buildings, but they are logically segmented. So for instance, you have a company or a building where they occupy maybe a 3-story building, and you have maybe a department in the first story, the second story, and the first floor, the second floor, and the third floor. So you have sales department, you have HR department, you have engineering department, but they are not physically together. So you have some staffs in the first floor, you have some staff on the second floor, you have some staff on the third floor. A virtual LAN allows that irrespective of where they are physically, they are able to connect on the same LAN. So that is what a virtual LAN is. So a VLAN allows that spanning some devices or switches, you are able to have a local area network and they are not physically in a open space where you will say they are connected together as a LAN. So that is what a VLAN is. So it is really no different from a LAN, except that it is not physical, but it is something logical, So both can work exactly the same way. That is what a VLAN is. So some of these things, for some of you, is a refresher for you. Some of you, it's entirely new, but there's always a first time. So with time, you'll get to understand these things better and better and better and better. So there'll be time for questions, even at each junction. So we've talked about a LAN, a local area network. We've talked about a VLAN, a virtual local area network, and I've explained the difference between the two. One is physical, the other is virtual. Now we have the third form here of networks or classifications of network we have here is wide area network. One of the beauty of networking is that the name can give you an understanding of what it does. So if I hear wide area, I hear local area, it gives me that understanding that this is local and this is wide. Something local tells there is something close by, something within you, and something wide tells there is something far, something big. So wide area network. So wide area network is a network that allows that can able to span distances. So, but in real sense, wide area networks, one are used to connect LANs together. So just like in the hands-on lab that we'll do, so you have a branch in Abuja, you have another branch in Port Harcourt or anywhere in the world, and you want these two branches to connect to each other. So a wide area network is what connects Abuja to Lagos, what connects Port Harcourt to Abuja, because they are geographically distant. So wide area network is what brings about that connection. So, and in the real sense of the word, the internet is a wide area network. The internet is a wide area network. So if you hear internet, it's gotten from inter-network. I remember when, from the initial, when we defined what a network is, connection of two or more devices to share resources, to share files, to share data, to share whatever form of resources, maybe a printer, maybe a file, maybe a document. So that is a network. So when you now say an inter-network, you have many networks connected together. Just the way we have international and intranational. Inter is different countries communicating together, you traveling from different countries, while intra is within. So when we say internet, internetwork is saying too many networks connected together. So the internet in real sense is an example of a wide area network, because you can be here in Nigeria or in Lagos or wherever part of Nigeria you are, and you can connect to somebody in Singapore, in US, in Canada. You can have a Skype call. You can go to Google server. You can fetch a Google page that is resident somewhere in Australia. So what is making that magic happen is the network, is the internet, and that is a wide area network. So anytime you hear about internet, the first thing you should come to is a wide area network, because it's allowing you that is local here in Nigeria or in Lagos or in Abuja, wherever you are, to be able to connect to somebody who is far away, or connect to a resource which is far away. So that is what a wide area network is. So we also have what we call the virtual private network. So these are also, we've been talking about these terms around network. So we looked at the LAN, local area network. We looked at the VLAN, the virtual local area network. We looked at the wide area network, the WAN. And the next one we'll be looking at is the virtual private network, which is VPN. Some of you must have heard VPN times and times over. VPN, my VPN, I need a VPN to my office. I need a VPN connection to visit a website. So you've been hearing VPN. So what is a VPN? So, okay, if I should take it for face value, it means virtual private network. It is something virtual, meaning it is logical. It is private, meaning that it is secure. It is only for me. So nobody will have an idea what I am doing, and it's a network connecting me. So that's from the word itself. But a VPN, a virtual private network, actually sits in between what a LAN or a wide area LAN, wide area network means. So, but what it means is that you are able to remotely connect to your office or remotely connect to a place as though you are physically there. So let me give an example. So with this remote work, like a lot of people are saying they are working from home. They are working from home. You've heard a lot of people saying, okay, because of the COVID-19, the pandemic, that they are working from home. How are they able to work from home when some of the resources or some of the tools they need to work are resident in the office? So their application, backend application or banking application is resident in the office, in that data center. Now, how can they access it while at home? So the VPN is what does the magic. So what the VPN does is that it's able to create a path through the internet, a private path through the internet to the office, so that whatever it is the person is sending or receiving from the office, it is encrypted, it is private. So that is what a VPN is. And as you can see here from this diagram here, you see a host somewhere in Colorado, which is somewhere in the US, is doing a VPN through the internet to as though is in the office in the headquarters. So that is what a VPN is. And the significance of a VPN is just for security, because the internet is a public space. So whatever it is you do on the internet can be logged, can be tracked, it's visible. So, but the VPN gives you that private connection, that private tunnel where you can pass in or receive information without anybody having an idea what you are doing. So that is what the VPN is. Yes. So we looked at these forms of network because those are basically, we're looking at the foundations of networking. We've defined what a network is. We've defined a local area network, LAN. We've defined a wide area network. We've defined a VPN. We've defined a VPN, a LAN, a WAN. So we're looking at network architecture now. Network architecture. Now, when you talk about networking, there are two major architectures that come to mind. There's what we call the peer-to-peer and the client server. Okay, so we have the peer-to-peer and the client server. So it's not rocket science, it's very simple. Peer-to-peer is peer-to-peer, like you and your peer, both of us are at the same level. So we are talking together on a one-on-one basis. So I have something to offer, you have something to offer. So it's a peer-to-peer connection. Example of a peer-to-peer connection is like a Bluetooth that you're sharing file. So you're only sharing file with one person. You're only receiving file from one person. So I can do a Bluetooth to your phone, send a file to your phone. That is a form of peer-to-peer connection. But the client server is that there's a device which is tagged the server, and there's a device which is tagged the client. The server, from the word server, is the one serving, is the one hosting the resources that everybody needs, while the client is the one who wants that. I don't know if we're together. Hello.
We are together. We are together.
Yeah. So I hope you understand this.
Yes, sir. We are together.
So let me use one very homely illustration of a client server. So a server can be like a mango tree that has mangoes, while the clients are the people that need those mangoes. So the mango tree always has mangoes on it. The client is the one who is always seeking to pluck mango from that tree. So the server, whenever you hear a server, this is a server, it does not necessarily mean a physical device. It's just based on its function. So we give names to things in networking based on their function. So if I say a client, it is because of its function. That's why it is tagged a client. When you say this is a server, it is because of its function. That's why it is tagged a server. So it is not a physical thing. So it is basically based on the function. So when we say router, it's because it's doing routing. Switching is because it's doing switching. A bridge because it's doing bridge. So all of those functions or names are derived from their functions. So that's what a client server is. And I've explained what a peer-to-peer is. So two devices sharing resources, both of them. So nobody is the client, nobody is the server. They are both sharing resources. They are both. So I send a file to you, you send a file to me. We are on a peer-to-peer network. So these things are very simple. Now, I've explained what a peer-to-peer network is. This is an example. You can go through it. I've also explained what a client server is. This is also an example. Now, we'll look at physical network topologies. So remember, we're looking at introductions to networks and elements of the network. So for this module 1, so this is an intro. So we'll be touching the basics. We'll be touching the foundations of networking. You get, and okay. Ayodele said he cannot hear anything from his side. Can you all hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes,
sir.
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. So Ayodele, I need to check your audio. Yes. Okay. So we're looking at physical network topologies. Now, a topology, when usually the word topology, the first time I came across it is in geography, when they say what's the topology of a land, whether it is slide. So it's just talking about how, or the dimension of how a land or something is. So in networking, you always hear architecture topology, or you say an architect, okay, a topology. So topology is more of a diagram. So architecture talks about design, you get. Then topology just talks about the diagram of how things are placed. So if I say bus topology, star topology, ring topology, mesh, it's just telling me about how the devices are placed and how they are connecting with each other. So it is how well I arrange them that will make it either a star, a ring, or a mesh. It is just based on physical arrangement. So we'll be looking at this one by one. Now, the first one we'll be looking at is bus topology. Now, the first thing, bus topology, they got it from the word bus. So if you are in Lagos, or if you have entered some of these large buses in Lagos, or some of these big buses, or staff buses, you will see that in the middle there's a hole, there's a passage in the middle. Then there's where people can sit at the right. There's also where people can sit at the left. So there's one passage that goes. Then some people can sit at the right, some people can sit at the left, whichever way. So that talks about a bus. So a bus means there's one single line of connection. Okay, one example coming to my mind is in Nigeria here, our electric pole, our electric distribution. You will see a pole wire run through a street, and from that street, every house is picking electricity. So that is a bus topology. So there's electricity from the transformer that is running through the poles down to maybe the next transformer, or down to the last house. Again, and everybody on that street is speaking from one electric pole. That is a bus topology. Now, the disadvantage of the bus topology is, if you notice, if the transformer gets spoiled, everybody connected to that transformer is going to not have electricity. If the light caught in the middle, let's say it's, I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer. Can you?
We can see it.
Yeah. So let's say, for instance, now, let's say something happened and maybe thunder or something, the thing caught here. It means, since let's say this is the source here, these guys here will not have electricity. So that is a bus topology. It is one line that connects everybody together. So that's a bus topology. Now, the second is a star topology. Now, a star topology is that everybody, there's a center of gravity that everybody connects to. So the best example they use for this is the hub and spoke for your bike. If you look at a bike or a bicycle, you see that there's a central position. Then there are spikes that connects to everywhere. So that is a star topology. So it's more like a hub and a spoke. So there's a central place, then everybody connects from that central place. Till date, this is what most banks use. So every bank in Nigeria, most of them, if not 99% of the bank's architecture are built on star topology, meaning that everybody connects to the headquarters. So the headquarters is where the data center, the banking applications, everything they need is resident in the headquarters. So every branch, whether in Lagos, in Abuja, outside the country, they all connect to that central location. So that is a star topology. So the advantage of that is that if one of the devices fail, you get every other person's. But it means that you've placed everything at the center of gravity, which is here. So that is the star topology. So you also have a ring topology. So remember, it's just how these things communicate or physically placed. So one of the things you get to learn is how things work. So you understand how, even though you have a branch in Abuja, you have a branch in Port Harcourt, you're able to understand how the communication is working. So a ring topology says that, okay, they work in circle. So what it means is that, which is very robust. So if there is a break in transmission here, it means that this PC can receive connection from here. If there's a break in transmission here, so it's redundant. So either ways is able to get connection and nobody is left out. So that is a ring topology. Now a mesh topology, which is the best but very expensive, is that everybody connects to everybody. So if there's a disconnect here, there's a connection here, there's already a connection. If there's a disconnect here, there are multiple redundant links. There are multiple redundant links where connectivity is ascertained. So that is what we call a mesh topology. So a mesh topology in practical use cases, most of these web servers like Google, that they need everybody, they need to be 100, they need to be 99.9999% up. They have a mesh topology so that if there's a disconnection on one end, you can still get to them. If there's disconnection on one end, they can still get to them to ensure that there's 99.99999 availability on the internet. So for such kind of critical applications or servers or service, they use a mesh topology for it so that there will always be availability, that people will be able to access those resources every time. So that is a mesh, but it's a bit more expensive. So we've talked about bus topology, we've talked about ring topology, we've talked about star, we've talked about mesh. So we're looking at point-to-point topology. Now, this one is very common. For some of you, maybe you've seen a radio. So for some of you that worked in telecommunications firms, or you say point-to-point radio or line of sight. So, but this one just talks about you have two communication devices connecting to each other as they face each other. So you have a router here connecting directly to a router. You have a PC connecting to a PC, a device connecting to another device. So that is what we call point to point. So nobody is in between. It's like the peer-to-peer network, that it is just between me and you. Nobody is coming in between us. So both of us are the only one receiving and sending. That is a point-to-point topology. Then to point to multi-point topology is that there's one location and every other person can connect to. So as you can find here, there's a router here in the head office, and there are many branches. So everybody connects to the head office. So that is a point to point to point. So one point connects to multiple places. Or you have here where you can one device is connecting to multiple points, just as you have here. So these are some of the basics. So remember, we're looking at the foundations, the introduction to networks, to networking. We looked at what a network is, the forms of a network. We've looked at the network architecture. We also looked at network topologies. So the next thing we'll need to look at is network medium. network medium. Now, remember when we're defining a network, the network is a connection between two or more devices to share what? Resources. Now, for there to be connection, then there must be a medium. Hello?
We are with you, sir. We are with you.
Yeah. So for there to be connection, then there must be a medium. So if you remember when they were teaching transportation, means of transportation, they said there's road transportation, there's water transportation, there's air transportation, and maybe recently now there's space transportation with Elon Musk's discovery. Yeah, so but for anything to leave from point A to point B, there must be a means to which it would move. So for it to say two or more devices are connected, then there must be a medium by which they will be connected. So if we are connected now, you can hear me, I can hear you through a medium. Now the medium is what is allowing that. We cannot be connected without a medium. Check it anywhere. You can't move from point A to point B without a medium. So that's what the network medium is. So now network mediums are classified into two. There's wired and there's wireless. There's wired and there's wireless. So wired is you have a cord, a cable, as many people call it, cable. So you have a cable. Wireless is using electromagnetic waves to connect. So wired or wireless. So for wired, we have the coaxial cable, we have the twisted pair cable, we have the fiber optic cable, and there are many other cables that as they manufacture them, it is, but definitely you will see a cable that will be the connection. Then for wireless, you have microwave, you have the Wi-Fi, you have Bluetooth and whatever form of wireless connection. Hello, are we together? Hello.
ana shirin lex ne ba waje ɗaya suke tsayawa. Ka tsaya ko?
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me. It will be good you mute your mic so that if you're not talking, so that
we can hear you.
Okay, so that's for the wired and the wireless. So so coaxial cable. Coaxial cable is like the TV cable, is the DSTV cable, the TV cable that I have at home. Is used to transfer or connect. So you have a black cable. I think I should have it here. So this is how it looks like. You have a black cable. For some of you that use dish, you see that cable that goes to your decoder, then goes to the dish outside. That's a coaxial cable. For those who, before we had dish, for some of us who are way older, when you used to watch local TV, you used to have a cable that will plug to the back of your TV, then you now go to your ceiling and go to a pole, then to the antenna outside. So that's a coaxial cable. That's what it is. And the connector it uses is a BNC connector. So that's what it uses to connect. So so that's just pretty it. So it is rehearsed to as coax and contains a center. So these are just stories you can read about. And BNC connectors are what you use to terminate it. Now there's also what we call the twisted pair cable. Now this is the cable everybody knows as LAN cable, Ethernet cable, LAN cable. You must have heard that very well. Even if you are not an IT person, you must have heard of LAN cable. Can you give me internet? You will now plug it to your system, then you have internet connection. So that in real terms is called a twisted pair cable. And this twisted pair cable is in two types. There's a shielded twisted pair, there's an unshielded twisted pair. Now, most of the ones you know is called the unshielded twisted pair. You can bend it, you can roll it around your hand, it is unshielded. Then the shielded is very thick. Okay, you might be asking why shielded, why unshielded? Because when you want to run these cables outdoor, because of things like rats, like temperature, they use the shielded. It is very hard, very thick. If it was a physical, I would have shown you how it looks like. So it's very thick, it's very hard. Most of the times, it usually is black in color, but you can give it on any color. So it's very hard and it's a regular cable. So the reason why they made it shielded is because it will be exposed to a lot of environmental factors. There will be rodents, there will be a lot of, so you don't want a rodent to be able to eat that cable and break your means of transmission. So, but the unshielded is for indoor. You run it within the office, you run it in the server room. So that is the twisted pair cable. Now, the twisted pair cable is twisted just to is twisted together as a pair to minimize interference, because when electromagnetic signals are being passed through that cable, there might be interference from neighboring connectivity or connections. So it is twisted in such a way so as to avoid interference. Now, and this UTP cable, this unshielded twisted pair, the UTP cable means unshielded twisted pair, comes in category. You have what we call Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, Cat 5E enhanced, Cat 6, Cat 6 enhanced. Okay, so as you advance in networking, you'll be able to hear Cat 5 cable, Cat 6 cable, Cat 5 cable, Cat 6 cable. So that is it. So of twisted pair. So, and the connector you use for twisted pair cable is called an RJ45 or an RJ11. So this is how it is. A lot of you must have seen this before, what you plug to your system. Now that is an RJ45 connector. What you plug to your laptop or you plug to your desktop or your PC is called an RJ45 connector. Now, there's also a smaller one that they plug to phones. If you've ever, anyone who has an IP phone or you have seen a phone, IP phone, it's very small. It looks exactly like that one, but it's smaller. It is an RJ11 connector. So that's it. So we've looked at coaxial cable and the connector is BNC connector. We looked at the twisted pair cable and the connector is RJ45 or RJ11. So RJ11 is the smaller one, RJ45 is the bigger one. Yes, so fiber optic cable. Now, fiber till date is the fastest means of transporting data when it comes to wired connection. It transfers data at the speed of light. I can't remember physics, but I think they were saying 3.8 something as to the speed of light. So fiber connection is the fastest. So it uses light impulses rather than electricity or magnetic signals. It uses light. So it sends data at the speed of light. It sends data at the speed of light. That is a fiber. So it is called fiber optic cable. There'll be a diagram here where you can see it. Then there are basically two types of fiber optic cable. There's a single mode fiber and there's a multi-mode fiber. So this is how the fiber looks like. This is a fiber optic cable. And one of the beauty of fiber optic cable is it can go distance. It can go kilometers. So before I forget, one of the limitation of UTP cable, before I forget, is that it cannot go beyond 100 meters. The limitation of twisted pair cable is that once it gets to 100 meters, the signals begins to degrade. I think they call it attenuation, where it begins to degrade after a particular distance. So when you run a twisted pair cable, after 100 meters, the signal begins to fail. But for fiber, you can run it for kilometers. You can run a fiber from Lagos to Abuja, and your signal will still be as though it was just a short distance. You can run a fiber from Nigeria to Australia. That is how fast, or that's how durable and how fast a fiber is. And it is very expensive because things like that will also be very expensive because of the size and all of the things they've put to make it work in such a way. So fiber optic cable is the fastest, and you can go for kilometers and hundreds and thousands of kilometers. It can run through, and it will send signals at the speed of light. So so the connectors that I use is the straight tip connector and the subscriber connector. So this is how the connectors are whenever you're talking about fiber. So these are still the foundations of networking. Now, when we talk about we've talked about the wired mediums. We've talked about coaxial. We've talked about UTP cables or STP cables, the fiber optic cables. Now, when it comes to wiring, there are two major standards that there are different types of wiring standards. So there's a British standard and there's an American standard. The British standard is T5686B. The B there is British, just like we have British English. And the American standard is the T586A, is the American standard. Yes. And as we go further, we'll get to, even in these slides, we'll be seeing their configuration, what's their difference. So the American standard is called the straight through cable. You have the same at one end and the same at the other end. The crossover cable is the British standard. And you have what we call the rollover cable. We'll be looking at what they do. Now, straight through cable is used to connect the same devices. So in networking, when you have two or more devices that are the same, maybe a PC to a PC, a switch to a crossover is two different devices. Sorry, so straight through is to two different devices. Straight through cable is to connect two different devices. A PC, a host here means a PC to a switch, or a hub, a router to a switch. So when you have two devices that are different, a switch and a PC, a PC and a router, a PC and a hub, you use a straight through cable. And in reality, if you look at the cable, the cross section of the cable, it just means that point 1 here is connecting to point 1 at the other end, point 2 here is connecting to point 2 at the other end, 3 is just straight through. Then for crossover, it is being merged, as you can see here. So, and it is used for the same devices. So crossover is used for similar devices. Straight through is used for different devices. So for crossover, you have a switch to a switch, a host to a host, a router to a host. A router is also seen as a PC because it has memory, it has RAM, it has everything that a PC has. So a router to a PC, a switch to a switch, a computer to a computer, use a crossover cable. And what's the difference? One is connected to 6, 1 is connected to 3, 2 is connected to 6, the same way. So it is crossed over cable. Then the last standard here is the rollover cable. So the rollover cable is 1 to 8. So typically, I want you to follow me closely. Typically, in a twisted pair cable, there are 8 wires that goes through there, but the active ones are 1, 2, 3, and 6. These are the ones that are actively used there. So the other ones are just there. They can use them to carry power, to do some other things. But majorly for transmission, 1, 2, 3, and 6 are the ones used. So, but in a rollover cable, what you do is 1 is connected to 8, 8 is connected to 1, 2 is connected to 7, 7 is connected to 2, 3 is connected to 6, 6 is connected to 3, 4 is connected to 5, 5 is connected to 4. So that is what we call a rollover cable. And where do we use a rollover cable? We use it whenever we want to manage devices. When you want to console into a router or into a switch or into a device physically, that's where you use a rollover cable. So, so this is more like a class activity, and to be sure that you have an understanding of what I've been explaining. So for 1 year, what type of cable would I use? I want everyone to participate. Hello.
You will
Crossover
use
cable. Crossover cable.
Okay, I'll use a crossover cable. Is anybody who think otherwise? Is there anybody that thinks otherwise? Okay, so crossover. A crossover cable for 1. Are you sure?
yes.
Crossover. Yeah, so Tolulope has put it there straight. So crossover is for devices that are the same, switch to switch, host to host, router to host. I said the reason why here is router is also seen as a PC. Straight through is 2 different devices, host to switch or hub, or host to switch to router to switch. So if you look at this activity here, a host or a PC is connecting to a switch, it is a straight through cable.
It's straight.
Yes. Then a switch to switch is what?
Crossover.
Yes. A switch to a router is what?
Crossover.
A switch to a router, 2 different devices.
It's straight. Straight through.
Yes, straight through. Yes. And this
Yeah,
4
straight.
is what?
Straight through. Straight through.
4. Yes.
4 is
But
straight.
see here, it's a console. Remember the rollover I talked about? 4 is console. He named it console here, telling you that it's for managing this device. So it's a rollover cable. For some of you who have seen network devices, the console cable is always, it's more like a blue, light blue, like violet blue. Maybe next class I might just take a snapshot
Orange
of
and
it so that you
white.
can see. Yes, so that is a rollover cable, a console cable. Yes. So let me.
This conference will now be recorded.
So we're talking about patch panel. So patch panel. So I'm giving an example of this. And when you enter a server room, when you check a rack, you will see something like this. So what it does is that it's like a collection point. You get that a cable is connected to, and it now goes through the wall, through the ceiling, the wall jack. So for some of you who have maybe connected a LAN, you will notice that it goes to a wall, or it goes to somewhere where you plug it to. That is called a wall jack, or a mounting point there. Then inside the wall or inside that building, there will be a cable that they will run. It's like the cable, at least electrical works will be very, very familiar with electrical works, electrical fittings. At least you know that your switchboard or your fan, there are cables that is run through the wall to the fan or to the air conditioner for it to work. So that's how it works here. So from that, it goes from that wall jack, it runs through the wall to the server room. So in that server room, it is patched here in one of these ports. So this is the patch panel. As you can see, this is how it looks like. This is a patch panel. So you patch it here. Then from behind, it is patched here. So from here, so that is through the wall, it is patched behind this guy, at the back of this guy. Let me give an example, if I can find one. The back of the patch panel. So because it's at the back, it is patched. So this is how the patch panel is patched. at the back. If I can find anyone. Okay, let me see if I can use this. Okay. So if we were in a physical class, like taking you to the server room to go and check these things out. Okay, so this is how it's patched behind it. I saw one of them. So this is how it looks like. We get this is how the cables are patched behind. So behind this face at the back, this is how it looks like. So all the cables are patched behind. Then you will now take a cable from this surface and plug to your router or to your switch. I don't know if you get me. Okay, so let me run through that again. So I'm just describing how the cable from your laptop gets to connect to the switch in the server room or to the router in the server room, whatever device that is that you are connecting to. So the cable from your system connects to a wall. For many enterprise organization or big organization, you will find a wall jack, like a wall socket where you plug your cable in, your RJ45 cable, your Ethernet cable, your LAN cable in. So you find that from that, there's a cable that runs to your laptop or to your IP phone. Now, behind the wall jack, there are wires, still UTP cables that are run through the wall to the server room, wherever the server room is. Then it is now patched in a patch panel here. When it is patched in a patch panel, they now take up that port here and plug to the switch. So so this is how it now looks in front. From here, they connect to the switch where you can now have connectivity. I hope we all understand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me make progress. We are behind schedule. So I just wanted to explain so that in your mind you have a flow to know how your cable from your laptop or for your PC connects to a switch in the server room. So when we use a diagram saying a PC connects to a switch, you understand that there are a lot of things that go in between connecting a PC to a switch. So that is what we call a patch panel. So another thing is Ethernet basics. Okay, this is just talking about Ethernet. Now in Ethernet is a connection media access method that allows all hosts on the network to share same bandwidth. So in Ethernet, that's why we call Ethernet cable. There are bandwidth sizes. Ethernet itself is 10 megabits per second. 10 megabits per second speaks to bandwidth or size. So bandwidth is like what you are allowed to, like the speed. So let me give an example. It's like double carriageway, like a road. You have some roads that are big, some roads that are small. So when you have 10 MB, it means that you cannot download more than 10 MB at a flow. You can't carry a truck road or a truck of 20 MB and pass through that road. It will not go. That's what that 10 MB means. So the speed, the highest speed you can get per second, megabits per second, is 10. For fast Ethernet, the maximum you can get is 100. For Giga Ethernet, the maximum you can get is 1000. For 10 gigabits, the maximum you can get is 10,000 per second or at once. So that is more like in terms of size, in terms of speed. So some of the concepts you always hear around also in Ethernet, in networking, is collusion domain, broadcast domain. So I used to give this simple explanation on what a collusion domain and a broadcast domain is. It is very simple. A domain is an area. It's just like you say a kingdom, a king's domain. So there's a domain, there's an area. An area where you have collusion is called a collusion domain. An area where you have broadcast is called a broadcast domain. It's as simple as that. Collusion domain, an area or a segment where you have collusion is a collusion domain. An area, a segment where you have broadcast is a broadcast domain. And there's a CSM, we'll look at that. So I've explained what collision domain is, what broadcast domain is. Now, also, there's also another concept you should know. Internet networking, there's what we call carrier sense multiple access collision detection. Now, in the olden days, they used to use a device called hub. We'll look at what a hub is in some few slides. So the hub works like an extension box that once you pass connectivity or electricity to one end, everybody gets it. So if I send a message, everybody will get my message on the blow. If A sends message, everybody will get it. If B sends message, everybody will get it. So there's high chances that A and B will send message at the same time and there will be collusion because we are all sending to everybody. So, but this carrier sense multiple access was what they used to be able to detect and prevent collusion. But in real sense these days, it is no longer in vogue because with the advent of switches, they've been able to control collusions. So you don't have collusions as it was in the days of hubs. There's also another concept called half duplex and full duplex Ethernet. Now, half duplex is like you're walking, talking. You can only speak once and you wait for the other person to respond. So it is unidirectional. You send and you wait to receive. You receive, you can't send and receive at the same time. It's like you're walking, talking. Someone speaks, the other person listens. Another person speaks, the other person listens. So that is what we call half duplex communication. For full duplex communication, it's like your telephone. Both people can be speaking at the same time and they can both be hearing themselves. So that is what we call full duplex communication. So now we'll be looking at networking devices. So remember the definition of networks: connection between two or more devices so that they can share resources. Now, these resources are resident either in a client or in a server. This resource is either in a peer or in a peer. Okay, so I'm trying to put everything together so that you get an holistic understanding of everything. So connection between two or more devices, and there must be a medium. Now the medium can be wired, it can be wireless, that medium. Now that medium has to have intermediary devices connecting them together. For instance, you are here in Lagos and you need to access a file or a website in Australia. You need to have to go through major devices or major bus stops to be able to get there. So let me give an example. If you want to travel from Lagos to Australia, you get from your house, you need to take maybe a bike or a car to the nearest bus stop. You get, or you take a Uber to the airport. Then from the airport is a device, is a location. From the airport, you take a flight to maybe London or a connecting flight. It's also another device. From London, you take another flight to Australia. You don't get to Australia on a blow. You need to pass through intermediary devices. So these are the devices that that information passes through for there to be connectivity. So there's a hub, there's a repeater, there's a modem, there's a NIC, there's a transceiver, there's bridge, switch, wireless access point, router, firewall. So I'll be running through them because of our time. So a hub is obsolete. They don't use it. It has gone to extinction, just like dinosaurs. It has gone to extinction because it's no more in use again. But then in the formative stages of networking, that's why we still bring this up so that at least you have an idea of history of what was in use before. Now, a hub works in such a way that when you send information, it sends it to everybody. So everybody gets it. Extension wire box is an example, the perfect extension box. Once you put electricity on one point, everybody gets it. So that's how a hub is. So So when you send information on one end, everybody gets it. So that is a hub. Now a repeater. Remember when I was talking about UTP cables, twisted pair cables, where I said they cannot go in beyond a maximum of 100 meters. So it's just like in the pole electricity example I gave. You get, there's a maximum distance a cable can stay on the air. They need to put another pole wire that will be able to carry that electrical cable to the next length. I don't know if you get me. So those pole wires are like repeaters. So they are able to keep that cable going the distance. So a repeater having a UTP cable gone to 100 meters is able to extend or amplify the signal for another 100 meters. So that is what a repeater does. Another example of a repeater also is in telecommunications. You have marks everywhere. So you notice that as signals are being broadcasted to one end, another mark is receiving it and broadcasting it to the other end. So it is amplifying the signal. So that is what a repeater does. Now a modem is one of the common words. Everybody, I have internet modem, a modem, I bought a modem, I'm using a modem. A modem actually means modulator, demodulator. Modulator, M-O, demodulator, D-E-M. That's what we call a modem. So it's a device that modulates digital signals into analog carriers. So you have the electromagnetic waves that your telecom provider like MTN, Airtel gives you. So your modem is able to convert that signal into a digital one that you can get on your phone, or you can get via wireless, or get with a cable. So it is modulating and demodulating. That is what a modem does. And the three examples, the traditional, which is what they call ports, is in extinct. The DSL cable, they use it in ancient countries that have not really seen the internet. And there's also the cable modem. So that is the modem. So we also have the network interface card. Every device, whether it's a PC, a laptop, always has a network interface card. And it looks like this for a desktop. So that's where you plug in your cable. So it is a network interface card where you plug your RJ45. So another intermediary device you should also know is what we call a transceiver. What is also called media converter. Now you can have a fiber and an Ethernet cable. Ethernet cable is like the UTP cable. So the transceiver converts fiber signal to RJ45. So this fiber here, so it's able to receive it and convert it to RJ45. So that is what we call transceiver. So I can run a fiber between Lagos to Abuja, and when it gets to Abuja, the device I want to connect it to has only an RJ45 port. What I will do is I will get a media converter, plug the fiber inside this hole, and get another cable and plug to my device. So that is a transceiver. Now a bridge. So in networking, the words. So what do you understand by bridge? There are two different locations and you want to connect them together. That's why you now bring a bridge to connect two different locations. So a bridge is more like two different network segments where you are connecting them together. So a switch is a multi-port bridge because you have two network segments or two network devices separated and you are connecting them together. That is called a bridge. So a switch is a multi-port bridge and is quite much more intelligent than hubs. So what a switch does is that when you send message through that switch, it's intelligent to know which port to send it to and not send it to everybody. So that is what a switch. So switch is what we use this day. We no longer use hub for networking. Yes. So we also have the wireless access point. The wireless access point is what converts your physical cable to wireless. So you go to your office and you say, I want to connect to the Wi-Fi, or an airport, I want to connect to the Wi-Fi. So there's a device that is beaming that wireless signal, that is beaconing that wireless signal, and that device is called a wireless access point. That's what gives you a Wi-Fi where you can connect to. So you have a name. So okay, I'm connecting to this Wi-Fi. That is what a wireless access point allows you to do. So it's able to convert a regular LAN cable, a regular Ethernet cable, into wireless signal so as to connect to the network. Now, a router is also one of the devices we'll consider. As we make progress, we'll have more deeper in depth into these devices, and we'll get to have a much more robust understanding as to what they do, where they fit in the whole network topology, and how they can help our networks come alive, or how they make networks work. So router, from the word router, it means route. So when you say someone is a router, it means the person creates a route. So a router. So a router creates route for traffic. So when you are sending message from one end to the other, the router is what determines where to send it to. Which example will I use now to give an example of a router? So let's say, okay, so let's say when you go to a motor park, for instance, and the motor park will have maybe a control or a place where they administer all the locations. So somebody says, yes, I want to go to Kaduna, I want to go to Ogun State. There's somebody that will be able to direct you that this is the car going to Kaduna, this is the car going to Ogun State. So that person is the one creating the route, who is telling you that, okay, you want to go to this place, enter this bus. You want to go to this place, enter this place. So the router makes that decision of creating route. So when an information is sent to it, and based on its destination address, is able to create a route and tell it that, okay, this is the way you should go, this is the way you should go. So that is a router. Yeah, so and this is a critical example of these things. Okay, so you have the internet modem here. So you have the internet modem here. So which has this network connection, converts the analog electromagnetic waves into digital. Then you have a wireless router. So this wireless router is also acting as a wireless access point where you can connect your PCs, and your cable is also connected here. So the last device we'll be looking at here is the firewall. Firewall. Now, for some of you, you must have heard of firewall before, or maybe figuratively, you've heard that somebody is a firewall. The person is hard, and it's like somebody you cannot penetrate. Now, firewall is a security appliance, and it represents like a security guard. Just the way you go to every office or every organization, you have a security man and a gate. The security man is the one that determines who is allowed to enter inside the company or who is not allowed to enter inside the company. When you present ID card or you present means of identification, the security man will say, okay, you are allowed to enter, you are not allowed to enter. We are not accepting visitors. So that is what the security guard does. So the firewall acts as a security guard for the network. So it's able to inspect every traffic, every packet that is coming into the network, and be able to say this one is authorized, this one is not authorized. So that is what a firewall does, and is able to also look at it. It's just like in some offices that before you go out, if you are carrying anything outside the office or outside the building, they want to check So the firewall will also check who is coming out of the office. It will inspect to see if you are taking something you are not supposed to take. And if you are taking something you are not supposed to take, it will block you and say, no, you are not supposed to take this thing. And if somebody is trying to bring something in that is not supposed to bring in, it will block him. So that's what the firewall does. It's like a security guard that prevents or controls what comes in or goes out of an organization network, of an organization's network. So that is what a firewall does. And a firewall is done by policies. It's just like the security man. You will tell him that, sir, it's only people with ID card that is allowed to come into this office. So you'll be looking forward to ID card. Anybody without ID card, not allowed. Anybody with ID card, allowed. So those are the security policies that are being configured on this firewall that will tell it what to look out for, on what to block and what to allow. So this is an example of a network. Are we together? Are you together?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, okay. So now, I'm going to use this to explain a typical network of maybe any organization you find. You should have something around this. So you have the internet here. So I don't know what the internet service provider is, but internet is internet. Whether it's Glo, MTN, IPNX, Cyberspace, whatever ISP, internet service provider you have the internet here. So, and in that typical scenario, you have a firewall who is like the security man to protect the network from bad guys, from people outside. So just imagine you have a house without a gate, or there's no security man in your house, or there's no security man in your estate. Anybody can come inside. So that's why it's very necessary to have that firewall so that you don't just allow anybody inside your organization's network. And the internet is such a thing that the security risk is high. A lot of people who are 247, they even have automated devices, what they call command and control. They're always looking out for porous networks that they can infiltrate. So the firewall just stands as a border, a perimeter guard to ensure that outsiders don't gain entrance into the organization. So that's what the firewall. So the firewall sits there to protect the internal network from the outside. Then you have, in most organizations, you have a server farm or a data center. So that's where you have your servers, all your application servers, your web servers, every servers that the company uses is resident in the server farm. For some, you also have what we call the PBX, your IP PBX. So IP PBX is used for intercom. So that's for intercom, for voice calls. So you have that on a segment in some organization in the server farm. So, so that's the IP. Then you have a router. A router will be able to connect multiple network segments. So you can have maybe a finance department, a sales department, an engineering department, whatever departments have, they have their local LAN. So this is a LAN, this is a LAN. And in a LAN, what do you have? You have a PC, a laptop, you have a desktop, you have IP phone, which is connecting to more like for intercom. Then you have a wireless access point, you have a printer. So the same here. So the router connects two or more networks together. So this one LAN, this another LAN is able to connect two different LANs together for them to be able to communicate together. So that is what a router does here. So this is more like a description of what this network is. And switch is more like the connecting points where everybody connects. And I have explained that between this laptop and switch, there's a patch panel, there are cables that is run, and before it gets to the switch. So so this is more like a quiz. Want to participate, or you can put the answers in the chat box. What is a network? Somebody could say it or you could type it. Anybody? What's a network?